Mrs. Fish, and welcome to Mrs. Fish's School. All right, today I'm going to talk about our first English language learning strategy for the classroom, and that is the power of vocabulary instruction. All right, let's dive in. Whew. I'm going to need a big cup of coffee for this one. Okay, let's start with a common challenge in the classroom. You just created a gorgeous lesson and you're about to teach it, but you assume the students in your class already know the academic language that goes along with your specific subject. But here's the thing. Just because a student in your classroom might be conversational in English, that does not mean they automatically have the vocabulary that is needed for your lesson in math, reading, writing, social studies, science, whatever specific lesson you're going to teach. Students must be taught academic language in order to be the most successful they can in that content area. And this is not just English language learners, this is all students. But specifically, English language learners need explicit vocabulary instruction. Okay? And so vocabulary does not mean, here's a list of words, memorize it. Absolutely not. They need context of that words, time to practice, apply, and assess. And so I'm going to give you 6 great tips in order to just skyrocket your vocabulary instruction so that your students are the most successful and help you feel less stressed. But first, okay, now you know I need to teach academic language. I'm looking at my lesson and there are so many words. What words do you pick to choose to teach? We're going to talk about that next. Okay, what words do you choose in order to get the most bang for your buck in your lessons? Okay, we're going to talk about the 3 tiers of vocabulary. This is going to help your entire classroom, not just your English language learners. Okay, and of course, if you have a newcomer in your classroom, that means they know no English. You're going to have separate interventions in order to help them with all the words. But this will help the majority of your class. So tier 1 are basic words that your class should already know. So you might go over it quickly, but you're not going to deep dive into those vocabulary words because it's not a big bang for your buck. So if I was a 4th grade teacher and I was teaching the water cycle, a tier 1 word would be like sun, rain, cloud. They should know those words. I'm not going to waste time defining them. Tier 2 words are more words that are high frequency words that you'd see in academic contexts. So that also need to be most likely explicitly taught. So what words would that be? Like summarize. Now I wouldn't conversationally with my best friend be like, let's summarize our weekend. No, that's a very academic school word. So you need to refresh students. What does the word summarize mean for them to be the most successful? But they're going to hear that word over multiple different spheres of learning. So you might hear that in writing, you might hear that in reading, you might hear that in science and social studies, summarize that text. But it's an academic word. The 3rd tier would be very specific words to that vocabulary, to that like content area. So if I was teaching the water cycle, words to that would be like evaporation, condensation, precipitation. Now those are just for the water cycle, and I need to explicitly teach those vocabulary words for them to be successful in that unit. So when you're teaching vocabulary words, academic language, you're going to be really focusing on what are those tier 2 and tier 3 words for your biggest bang for your buck. So when you're doing this, you're going to make a list of, I'd say between 5 and 12 to 15. Any more than that, it's going to go way over their head, way too many words, in order to explicitly teach, as well as give some room for organic words to come up. So let's say you're reading a book and you have a list of words. You're like, I think some of these words are going to trip up my students. But also give room for students to maybe write a word down and be like, whoa, okay, Miss Fish, I have no idea what anaerobic means. Great. Okay, we're going to write that in a vocabulary journal, and I want you to maybe make your most educated guess of what you think that word means in the context of that writing, of that book that you just read. And then we're going to define it and review it and practice it. Or maybe you could have a word wall of words that stumped me. And that way, it gives students kind of a way to kind of cross that barrier to you to open up words that maybe you didn't even know that were tricky for students. Because the hard thing about being an educator is we already have all these beautiful, gorgeous words we know in our brain that we don't even always understand or know what words are harder for our students in our classroom. Okay, so thinking about your tier 2 words, your tier 3, and then leaving room for students to come to you with words maybe they don't know. So that's how you pick your list. Now I'm going to give you what are the 6 steps in order to teach those vocabulary words. All right, let's dive into how you were planning to teach those vocabulary words. Okay, so I have some 6 easy steps for you. The first one is you're going to explicitly teach the word. You're going to show that word up on the board or in a PowerPoint. You're going to have the word nice and clear. You might have a visual or an image that goes along with that word and the definition to that word. Now, when you teach the definition, you're going to connect it to your students' prior knowledge or background, so they're not just seeing it, but connecting it to how does that word relate to them. Now, number 2, students are going to restate that new academic word or that new vocabulary word. They're going to either restate the definition verbally or write it down in their own words. This helps you know if they fully understand the definition and the context of that word. And if they do, awesome. If they don't, how are you going to help them re-understand the correct definition of that word? Okay, so 2, they're going to restate it in their own words. 3, the students are going to be asked to create a non-linguistic representation of that word. So maybe they're going to draw a visual or a symbol. Maybe they'll act it out to fully understand what that word means. Okay, step 4, you're gonna have students engage in an activity with that vocabulary word. So maybe you're gonna have them compare the different vocabulary words. Maybe you're going to have them really focus on the prefix and suffix of parts of speech of that word. Maybe you're going to have them put it in categories. So say you're learning about the season. So these are all the winter words. This goes to summer words. These are the spring words. Maybe you're going to do a little around the room and stick sticky notes and have them go around. So what are you going to do to really get them to do an activity in order to apply those words? Step 5 is you're going to have students discuss with the words. You can have the words up on the board, but how are you going to get them having conversations with an elbow partner or think, pair, share, or in class discussions, really applying and using those words in speech. And step 6 is students are going to periodically play a game with that word. So those are 6 quick steps in order that you can do in your classroom tomorrow in order to improve your vocabulary. All right, I just gave you some 6 quick tips that you can use not only with your English language learners in your classroom, but all learners in your classroom, because learning academic language must be explicitly taught. Okay, I get this all the time though. You're like, thank you, that was really helpful, Miss Fish, but I don't have the time. Whoa, stop. You're gonna make the time. Because it'll save you time later. Make the time to teach that academic language, because later down the road, it will save you time from having to reteach your class and your classroom instructions in that vocabulary. Okay? We think through words, therefore, to improve thinking, we need to teach language and we need to teach vocabulary. The larger our vocabulary, the easier it is to become connected to new words that we already know. And vocabulary is the best single indicator of students' intellect and academic success. So the more words we know, the smarter we become, the more we understand. We learn through language, therefore we need to explicitly teach the language that is needed to be successful in that content. Okay, so in the long run, teach the vocabulary. It's gonna help the kiddos, it's gonna help you, and it's fun. If you found this YouTube video helpful, don't forget to follow, subscribe, like, and all the good things that you do with YouTube. If you need any help with newcomer vocabulary, please check out my Teachers Pay Teachers. I have simple classroom commands, classroom labels in English and in English and Spanish and in multiple other languages. So please go check that out. I'm here to help you. Again, I'm Mrs. Fish and this is Mrs. Fish's School. And thank you for stepping in. I'll see you next time.